To the first Java Like of 2016-17. My name is Duncan Carranza. I'm one of the 612 Language Arts TOSs for the district, and I will be your virtual guide this afternoon or this morning as we explore the new Language Arts adoption website resources. And what I'd encourage is that because this is a video, for sure you can pause at any time that you'd like, as well as pausing and bookmarking any documents that look valuable to you so that you can get back to them easily. I'd also recommend maybe projecting this video up in your classroom or meeting space so that your team, your PLC can all watch together, and then everyone kind of following along on their own computers to click when I click and make sure that you know what resources exist on this site. So without any further ado, let's take a look at what's on this page. To start out with, we're starting at the Home and Announcements tab. This is just going to be our classic landing page. It will have on here any new ideas, helpful info, tips and tricks, upcoming events that we definitely don't want you to miss. So again, and we'll try to make sure that we post the date as well so you know how old the announcement was. So this last announcement, again, you saw in an email, but just again is also here on this website of just what trainings, what about the Java Likes, what's going on next. More specifically for dates, when we move to the Calendar tab, what you'll see again is just a classic Google Calendar, and on there, what upcoming events around the new adoption exist. So again, IBD and Newsela Pro professional development opportunities. When we look into October, the peer learning labs that Inquiry by Design will be hosting. And then as we get to December, you're going to find then the individual days for the next Inquiry by Design professional development based on what grade you are. And again, the dates and times of those events are there, and more details will be uploaded to this calendar as we pin them down. Moving on to the third tab for Inquiry by Design. Inquiry by Design, again, is the physical materials that we adopted, and there's enough different resources packed into this website for Inquiry by Design that many of them ended up on this page, and there are some that are scattered onto different tabs. Right up at the top, you're going to find really just a blurb from textbooks on how to order missing materials back to your building. So if you got back from the professional development and found that you were 6 student readers short, or that you only asked for a teaching guide for 6th grade, but you also teach 7th, this is how you can request those materials from textbooks, including what information they'd really be looking for, which will help speed those materials arriving at your building. About halfway down the page, this link here is going to bring you to a Google document where you can sign up to host an Inquiry by Design peer learning lab. And these are a great opportunity to either be supported by one of the Inquiry by Design coaches as you lead one of the Inquiry by Design lessons in your class, or to co-teach with one of the Inquiry by Design coaches in your classroom, while a handful of teachers from across the district are there to also see what the process looks like. So you'd meet before your class period to talk to those teachers and the coach about what lesson you'll be teaching, some look-fors, things you have questions about, the demographics of your class. Then those teachers and the coach will come into your classroom, watch you teach a lesson, and then afterwards you'll all sit together and debrief. What did you see? What questions came up for you? What kinds of support would be helpful for you in the future? So we definitely encourage you to do that. It's a great way to really get some extra support from the Inquiry by Design trainers and coaches themselves. The last 2 resources down here, the click here for more background information about Inquiry by Design is valuable because it does, right at the top of this document, it will give you just an overview of the material. But then it does give you grade by grade specifics and breakdown. So you'll see an image of what are the materials that you should have in your building. What do they look like, both the student reader and the teaching guide? And then a brief kind of snapshot or overview of what units should you have, what texts sit within those units, what standards are in each unit, and then a brief description of the activities or prompts that students will be grappling with during that unit of Inquiry by Design. As we head back into the website itself, these links down here just link to images of the materials. So again, what should you have in your building? And then this red note here in the middle, again, leads back to something that I mentioned earlier. There are many Inquiry by Design resources that are sitting in different places for the unit slideshows themselves. So the PowerPoint or Google presentations that teachers created to help you walk through an Inquiry by Design unit, those are going to sit in the Scaffolding and Support Resources tab. So again, we're here at Inquiry by Design. Those resources are sitting here. Moving on to Newsela Pro, this is the electronic or digital resources that we have access to. This again are those online texts, Lexiled at different levels, that students can access by logging into a classroom that you've developed. So this icon would take you right to the Newsela site, but this document here is especially important. It's a large Google document, but it really contains all of the directions on how to start from scratch to move all the way through, how to get signed up yourself, how to get your students logged in, all the way down to some way more advanced tips and tricks on how to get the most out of Newsela Pro in your classroom. The last link on the page links to a variety of text sets that Newsela created for us in PPS based on the stories, the poems, and the readings in our Inquiry by Design units. So, as you're teaching an Inquiry by Design unit, this document would be helpful if you wanted to insert or supplement that unit with an extra text, a paired text, or a current event style text from Newsela Pro. So this, again, would be a great document to open up and bookmark so that you can get back to it easily. Moving on to the Reading Intervention Resources tab, while it looks very simple right here, each of these links then opens up into many, many more. What I would definitely recommend starting with is reading this introduction document. It's going to give you the background vocabulary around what are we talking about for reading intervention in PPS right now at 612. What are those resources? What vocabulary are we using when we talk about what's the difference, I guess, between a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 or a Tier 3 support? What supports do we currently have available to us? Once you have that background information, then these next three links for comprehension, vocabulary, and fluency or decoding are going to make a lot more sense. Once you open up those next links, you're going to find Google folders with many more tools at your disposal. So building-wide resources for comprehension, Tier 2 resources for reading comprehension, reading strategies, graphic organizers, and more tips. So again, it's folders of folders with tools and documents and supports for you to support your students as they really try to catch up with their peers as readers. The next tab contains all of our standards resources. So these are resources that were developed this summer by PPS teachers around the prioritized Common Core state standards that the PPS teachers last year decided upon. So again, each grade level has 41 Common Core state standards. That's a lot. They were then prioritized or slimmed down a little bit to really try to figure out what are the most important standards at each grade level. And then these links are going to open up and show you different resources based around those specific priority standards. So in each of the grade level folders, you're going to find 5 documents. One document for each of the 5 strands of the Common Core for ELA. So reading literature, reading informational texts, writing, speaking and listening, and language. Each of these documents contains the prioritized standards, those standards broken down and deconstructed, learning targets, essential questions, key vocabulary, rubrics, as well as assessment skeletons that you can use in your classroom with your students. So these tools will be very helpful for you as you plan in your class and really for the rest of the school year. Moving over into the Scaffolding and Support Resources tab, this again is where many more resources ended up for Inquiry by Design. Again, some of these resources are still under development and are coming, but many have already been linked in. I recommend starting here with the Setting Up for Success document, preparing students for discussions. This document, again, has a lot of tools stuck in it. This is going to have things to think about as you begin whole class and small group discussions in the Inquiry by Design units. Really everything from what is the physical setup of your classroom like, how is that going to work when you move into a whole class discussion, to how would you do inner and outer circles, what about pilots and wingmen, kind of those nuts and bolts bits, all the way into, and right up here at the top of the page, as race or as challenging topics come up in discussion in your class, what kinds of tools do you have available to you to be able to support your students in doing those discussions and feeling like they have the vocabulary for that work, rather than just kind of tossing them into a discussion without those tools and supports. So I definitely recommend perusing this document with your team before you step into those whole class or small group discussions in the Inquiry by Design units. A little bit farther down the page, this is where those unit slideshows sit. So for each grade level, for all the units we adopted, there will be slideshows, so PowerPoint or Google Slides sitting here that are just going to give you an example. Again, this is not what you must do, but this is an example created by a teacher in PPS of what could be on your screen while you move students through one of these units. So again, these documents were created by teachers but are being updated often or posted if they don't exist yet. But these documents are going to help you just get an idea of what could be up there on your screen, with notes, with activities, preparing the learner, kind of how do you scaffold in your students for success in Inquiry by Design. So again, open them up, take what you will from them, make a copy, make it your own, but rather than every 8th grade teacher or 7th or 6th grade teacher feeling like they needed to start from scratch in making a slideshow, here's a place for you to start. Moving into the last few tabs, the language arts equity resources are super helpful and important. These resources were developed over the summer between Portland Public Teachers and the equity department TOSAs to really try to figure out what tools maybe are best suited or would be most helpful for language arts teachers in the classroom. So when we look at these tools, you're going to find the classic, the Compass, agreements and conditions, and then really down into language arts specific resources. What about text protocols using the Compass? Here's a place, this document, where you can add text that you've used in the past to include extra voices that aren't often included in curriculum. So we definitely encourage you to add suggestions there. But resources around stereotypes and other ways to set up your classroom and to make sure that students feel supported, again, in your class as you begin discussing race and equity with them. Last on this page is just a link around feedback. So what kinds of supports don't you see on this page that you'd like to see? The last 3 tabs, fairly self-explanatory. A brief FAQ regarding past adoptions, so what should you do or what could you do with your EMC materials. A tab for the new novels that were adopted, so this first link will give you the 2 new novels at each grade level that were adopted. This link here, the PPS Multimedia website, explains how that you can request those novels or any of the previous novels for use in your classroom. And then last, which is very just simply right now, just the Job-alike resources. So these will post once this Job-alike ends, and we'll do that after every month ends. At this point, thank you very much for listening and following along. Please head back into your Google Classroom and complete your assignment and turn it into us, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.